Okay, you're live.
Thank you all very much. Good afternoon and welcome to the East Bay Regional Park District meeting. This is June the 2nd and we're starting just after 1:30. Thank you all for your patience. May I ask the clerk to please call the roll?
Yes, Madam President. Director Lane.
Present.
Director Wieskamp.
Present.
Director Eccles.
Present.
Director Coffey.
Present.
Director Waspy.
Here.
Director Rosario.
Here.
And Director Corbett.
I'm here. Thank you
Okay.
very much, Madam
You're
Clerk.
welcome.
Now is the time for the Pledge of Allegiance. Let us all reflect on justice for all as we conduct our Pledge of Allegiance today. I'd like to ask Director Rosario to please lead us.
Thank you. Again, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, someday.
Someday. Thank you very much, Dee. All right, our next item is the approval of the agenda, but we are going to make an amendment to the agenda as posted. We have one item that will be removed from the agenda for today, and I would like to ask the General Counsel and the General Manager to comment on that, item 2A.
Yes, President Corbett, members of the board, Carol Victor, District Council. We're recommending that the board remove item 2A, adoption of the land use plan and certification of the environmental impact report for the Concord Hills Regional Park land use plan. And the reason that we are suggesting putting that over for 2 weeks is we received a lengthy comment letter from Discovery Builders on Friday. We believe that alleging that the EIR was inadequate, and we believe that the EIR is adequate in all respects, but we think it's prudent to take a look at the comment letter that was received and to prepare a response before we take action on the item. So we're recommending that this be put over until removed from this agenda. We plan on bringing it forward on June 16th.
Thank you very much, Chief Counsel. Does the General Manager have a comment to make as well, or will that suffice?
No comment.
Okay, thank you very much, General Manager. All right.
I move we adopt the agenda with the exception of the removed item.
Thank you very
Second.
much. Moved by Director Lane and seconded by Director Waspy. Let's please call the roll.
Director Lane.
Aye.
Director Wieskamp.
Aye.
Director Eccles.
Aye.
Director Coffey.
Aye.
Director Waspy.
Aye.
Director Rosario.
Aye.
Director Corbett.
Aye.
Any further discussion?
Yes, Madam Clerk, I just would like to mention we're putting this item over until the next meeting, and so that will include anybody who's interested in making public comments. Those comments should be made at the next meeting. However, I would note that the public comment period will be opening in just a moment. So if people feel they have a comment they would like to make at today's meeting of any sort, the time is coming up in just a moment. So for those of you who are on the call who may want to comment. Thank you. So public comment period. We do have some comments that have come in by mail. I don't know if we've had any voicemail comments, Madam Clerk. You can let us know that. And we will, of course, have an opportunity for those of us who have joined us by Zoom today to make live comments as well.
Yes, Madam President, just to, for the record, just to approve the agenda. Removed and approved.
Oh, yes, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry. I
That's
did
okay.
that every other meeting.
It's all unanimous. No,
I'm
we
very
just
excited
did it.
about,
Okay.
yes. So the agenda is adopted with the amendment
Amendment.
unanimously. Thank you so
All
much.
right.
All
You're
right,
welcome.
public comments. I'm so excited about public comments. I'm ready to go. So, So would you like to start with, let's just, there's something else I didn't mention either, and I will do that now. Our regular, this regular meeting today, excuse me just a moment, I just lost my,
It's towards the bottom of the page.
I'm sorry, I lost it. Hang on, my phone is acting up for a minute here. Hang on.
I would be more than willing to read that for you if you want me to.
No, it's okay. I just
Okay, thanks.
lost. My phone went out. Okay, so just a moment. We are conducting this meeting today, our regular meeting, in accordance with Governor Newsom's executive order, allowing for board members to participate remotely. We're also providing live audio and video streaming and have provided the public the opportunities to submit written comments and call in for public comments or on any item or on the staff report, to call in and leave or to leave a voice message. So if you have read the agenda, you will know that you can submit and have submitted comments via email sent directly to our clerk, Yolanda Burial Knight, or you can submit a voicemail to 510-544-2016 and leave a message, and it will be then subscribed or transcribed. And if you are interested, of course, in speaking during public comments, you have the opportunity to do that via Zoom. And I'm sure you're already with us if you're going to be making comments today. So with that, Madam Clerk, let me turn it back over to you to start with probably the written public comments.
Yes, Madam President, we have received a total of 8 written comments, and 5 of them pertain to Mission Peak. 3 of them are exactly the same, and 2 are slightly different. So the first one I'm going to read is from Veronica Pang, and she says, I'm a resident near Mission Peak, Stanford staging area in Fremont. I understand Stanford entrance is supposed to reopen today, Monday, June the 1st. However, I'd like to request that the entrance's reopening be delayed due to civil unrest these days across the region. As this is a very popular entrance to the peak, it always gets very crowded and will continue to draw a lot of visitors from out of the area. The opening hours are long, from 6:30 to 9 p.m., and people habitually linger after the closing times, and there is no curfew enforcement inside the park. Other than COVID-19, residents here are also concerned the park will become an easy opportunity for people to gather and stay after dark, which should be avoided at this time of civil unrest across the East Bay. The entrance is in the midst of a residential neighborhood. Please put public safety the top priority and keep the Stanford entrance closed until the unrest eases up. That's from Veronica Pang. And the other one is from Sonal Gandhi, and it reads, please continue closure of Mission Peak Stanford entrance. I write to request the Park District keep Mission Peak Regional Preserve, Stanford staging area entrance closed to protect public health and safety in light of the continued shelter-in-place orders and widespread civil unrest. Last night, we watched violence break out in city after city in the East Bay. The city of Fremont closed Pacific Commons and the hub due to issues. In addition to shopping areas, car dealerships and gun shops have been looted. There are large numbers of angry, frustrated people looking for trouble. Last evening, I was at Santana Row, and there were dozens of police cars and cops to protect the neighborhood stores and apartments. If you plan to open up Stanford Avenue entrance to Mission Peak, do you have plans in place to protect our neighborhood? If not, then please keep the entrance closed to the public until the tensions escalate. The pandemic is still spreading. Alameda County now has the most confirmed cases in the Bay Area. On May 18th, the ACPHD issued a revised order with instructions for businesses and noted. Everyone should continue to stay and work at home as much as possible. Wear a face covering outside their home. Getting outdoors needs to be done close to home. Now is not the time to invite visitors back to Stanford entrance. And the other 3 are form letters. and they are written by Janet Benz, Randy Buswell, and Ruhal Patek, and I apologize if I messed up your name. And I'm just going to read one of them. I request the Park District keep Mission Peak Regional Preserve Stanford staging area entrance closed to protect public health and safety of the neighborhoods in light of the continued shelter in place. This is very similar to the letter that I just read. So I'm going to go down to the last paragraph, which is slightly different. And it says, as you know, prior to the pandemic, the thousands of visitors' vehicles invited the crooks to the area and car break-ins became routine. What might happen in light of the widespread civil unrest, particularly after dark? How will EBRPD prevent or manage this? Saying it's not your jurisdiction because it's outside the gate is not the answer. Fremont police have enough on their plates without necessarily adding this variable to the mix. Please close the park entrance to prevent an incident from occurring in the park or neighborhoods. That's it for Mission Peak. Another item is from Scott Bartlebaugh. It's regarding Crockett Hills, and he says, I'd like to thank David Kendall and the Park District for another successful wet season of managing the cattle at Crockett Hills Regional Park to minimize the damage to narrow multi-use trails. The cattle were kept in the Stewart property pasture or the far south pasture for the bulk of the wet season. This is important to prevent severe damage to the particularly valuable narrow trails. The lack of damage allowed the February trail work to focus on trail improvements rather than cattle damage remediation. Managing the cattle during wet weather reduces trail maintenance costs, maximizes trail volunteer benefits, and makes the trails much more enjoyable for all users. Segregating the cattle away from the highest value trails during wet weather has not always occurred, and several years ago resulted in severe trail damage. The value of park open space, and particularly trails in this period when most other park assets have been closed, has become even more apparent in this time of social distancing. The efforts to protect and maintain the trail assets are greatly appreciated. We ask for your support to make this practice possible in the future at Crockett Hills and other parks. Scott Bartlebaugh, BTCEB board member. And then the other one is from Neil Sitsui, and he says, Dear EBRPD Board of Directors, I am writing to encourage the East Bay Regional Park District to release a statement about the recent killings and harassment of Black people and the use of disproportionate force against peaceful protesters. Specifically, I urge the Park District to reaffirm our commitment to environmental and racial justice and nonviolence. One example, the recent targeted racial harassment of birdwatcher and New York Audubon board member Christian Cooper spotlights the risks that Black people commonly face in parklands and open spaces. As an organization that serves an enormous BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color constituency, the East Bay Regional Park District has a responsibility to ensure that our spaces are welcoming to all people, but particularly people from underrepresented racial and ethnic backgrounds. Best wishes and stay safe, Neil Tsetsui, professor at University of California, Berkeley. And that is the public comments.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Do we have anyone joining us live for public comments on the Zoom?
Yes, Madam President. We have Ari Suzuki. Ari, I believe I saw you in here. Let me find you. I'm going to unmute you. Ari, please keep in mind that you have 3 minutes. You can speak now, Ari.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dear directors, my name is Ari Glenn Suzuki, and I have worked here at the district since 2005. As you know, there has been a large, widespread response to the murder of Black Americans by police officers taking place over the last week around the US and here in the Bay Area. Our society is traumatized by the systemic, institutional racism that pervades every facet of our lives. I am asking that the board affirm that you vehemently oppose and condemn the actions of the police officers in Minneapolis who murdered George Floyd in cold blood, along with the hundreds of thousands who have been murdered before him. So many people are out protesting, and so many others not in the streets also want and need change. Our Black neighbors, friends, and family members should not have to live in fear every day that their child or parent may be the next one murdered by the people who swore an oath to protect them. I am not Black, and I do not claim to know the deep pain that Black Americans must endure. I do feel the terror, injustice, and rage of witnessing my neighbors suffer state-sanctioned murder. This is not only about police murdering Black Americans. The violence that is racism permeates all of society. Ahmaud Arbery, a 25-year-old Black man, was chased down and shot to death by white men as he jogged through a South Georgia neighborhood. But he's part of a long history that has targeted Black men in this country for just existing, like Mr. Cooper that the other commenter just mentioned. COVID-19 has killed a disproportionately large number of Black Americans at 2.4 times the rate of whites. And that is a continuation of the high rates of maternal mortality in this country, where Black women are dying at 2.5 times more often than white women. Our community is made up of people of all races, backgrounds, classes, abilities, religions, genders, and orientations. We are a diverse society. It enriches our lives, and that matters to us. So do Black lives. We need to talk with our Black coworkers, friends, neighbors, and customers and tell them that we are sorry. We will listen, we will speak up, we will take action, and we will not stop. As directors, you have a responsibility to your Black employees to openly assure them that they will be safe at work from racism and discrimination. Their lives have been traumatized repeatedly, and yet they are expected to show up at work every day with a positive attitude and be productive district employees. How are we helping them to do that? To heal? Have we reached out to let them know about resources and ask how we can help? Can we give them access to mental health days? Have we spoken out about our commitment to working towards justice? How are we working with all of our employees to remind them that inherent bias runs deep and that we are all responsible for unlearning racism? As you are asked to adjust the budget in view of the COVID-19 responses, I ask that you commit to supporting fairness in community health, education, and infrastructure, and to put aside funds for more training. I know that there are others in the district who also feel strongly that we need to take a stand to commit to dignity, respect, and justice for all. We cannot keep leaving that work to the most oppressed. I hope we can work together to make that happen, to become the type of society we want for our children and grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you, Ari.
Thank you, Ari.
We have another speaker, Mr. Hanson. Let me find you, sir. I'm going to unmute you.
Are we able to show people?
That's up to them.
Okay.
Mr. Hanson, do you want to be seen?
Yes, yes, why not?
Okay,
There's
I've got a.
some beautiful wildflowers where you should be right now.
Okay, where'd you go?
The hummingbird sage.
Looking for you, sir.
Yeah, very similar to the hummingbird sage. Well, I'll just go ahead. This is fine.
Okay, I still can't find you.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you, President Corbett, Clerk of the Board, and members of the board. And I just wanted to thank you for, I of course signed up to comment on Crockett Hills 2A, and we'll plan to come back in 2 weeks. But I just wanted to thank you, each of you and staff for setting up the Zoom and the very clear instructions for logging in and being able to hear the meeting, just for the comments of people who have preceded me and for opportunities in the next 2 weeks. So thank you for making attending the board during this very challenging time possible. So that's really all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've worked hard to make it work.
Yeah, yeah. It's a lot to get used to.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Ari and Mr. Hanson, you're more than welcome to stay in the meeting, but you will be on mute and your video will not be showing. Madam President, I do not see anyone else in the meeting that had requested a public comment. If somebody is in there that I don't recognize, if you could raise your hand, that would be great. Yeah, I know.
We'll wait a moment.
All
to see
right.
if there's anybody there.
Yeah. I guess the rest is staff, and I believe we have some attorneys.
Okay.
Outside attorneys. All right.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. And that's it for the public comments. But I did want to take a moment. You know, I'm usually a little more together when I'm like leading these meetings, but I realized I'm just like many other people. I don't even have a word for it. I'm angry and I am hurt. And I thought we would have just a short moment for board members to talk about what's been happening in the outside world and its relevance to the Park District. And I'll just start the discussion. I will ask you not to comment on public comments that have just been made because under the Brown Act, we cannot do that. But of course, we're thankful for comments that have been made. As public officials, it's our duty to not be silent at times like this. It is our duty to make comments. And I am shaken by the terrible, tragic murder of George Floyd, like so many others. And obviously over the last several weeks and for years before that, all the other tragic deaths and murders that have occurred. And especially in the African-American community, which is highlighted at this time because of the terrible video we all witnessed, which happened in Minneapolis. And as a park district, I think there's various ways we can respond or react to what has happened. I think one of the most important things we do is that we take into consideration our employees at a time like this, our wonderful dedicated employees who are working right now during very difficult times, and that we do what we can to reach out to them and make sure they have all the resources possible to help them during this difficult time. And so that they also feel respected, loved, and supported, all of our employees, and particularly our employees of color who are impacted by what is happening. And I think it takes a moment like this for us to rededicate ourselves as a park district, to take a look at all of our practices and ensure we're doing everything we can to uphold the trust of the community. We are a public agency after all, and we have public resources, and that we are employing those in ways that we should be proud of. I think we also are quite fortunate in that as a park district, we have wonderful resources. We have our beautiful open lands. These are public lands. This is a part of a democracy that people can gather together, pay their taxes, and places like parks can be provided for everyone. These are places where people should feel safe and where people can go to find peace and reflect on the situation that has been occurring over the last few weeks and over history for that matter. And we must do whatever we can to make sure that all feel welcome in our open spaces as well. Those open spaces are for all. And I reflect upon the unfortunate occurrence in New York with Christian Cooper, who was just bird watching when someone decided to call him into the police department. in a way where he might be harmed. So I think as a park district, we need to make sure that our beautiful and open resources are available and open and welcoming, and that we find some way to give a place for people to find peace. Obviously, we can't do a lot of gathering these days, but perhaps we can rededicate. We do have places that have been dedicated in the past to peace and things like that. We have the wonderful International Peace event that we have for the last 2 or 3 years. I think it's the last 2 years in our parks. And that we just make sure that we have these places and spaces where people can go at a time like this. And, you know, I think we've come to a state in our country where we're, some people could say we're at a tipping point. I like to say we're at a turning point. Obviously, when systems get choked down and people experience such frustration and fear and anger, that reactions happen. And I think we should do whatever we can to make sure we support those that are exercising their constitutional right, their precious right to gather and to speak out and to try to make change. So I think this is a turning point for us in this country. And as a board, I hope that we can support them. I also, in just in closing in my comments, I would hope the board would consider today asking staff to come back to us next week with a resolution that commemorates you know, our thoughts today, you know, ensuring the openness of our parks for all, condemning the horrific actions in Minneapolis of a few days ago, and continues to support the good work of our employees who do interact with the public every day in order to ensure they are safe and that we have, you know, wonderfully maintained places for people to find peace and solace and reflect. So I'm sorry that's, my thoughts are a little all over the place right now, but I hope today as board members and as leaders in the community that we can make a statement and that we can pass a resolution showing the rest of our public how we absolutely do not accept the actions of the last few days and of history, and that we as a board, in whatever part we can in a park district, can move forward and continue to you know, support our democracy, support our employees, and just do the right thing and really take seriously what's happening in our country and do what we can to make change. If anybody else would like to make some comments, you're very welcome to. Just raise your hand and I can call on you. Director Rosario?
Yeah, thank you for that statement and well said. And I would second a resolution. Because I know I would have a tendency to ramble on this, I could, and I would like to read something from a blog, and her blog name is I Am Here. This will help me get focused, and she states something that is within my heart. It starts, racism, and inhumanity, still there, just below the surface, and poking its ugly head up. Too few even know this history or refuse to acknowledge it. My daughter's paternal grandfather, Black from Oklahoma, witnessed lynching. Horrors inflicted on Black, Brown, Asian, and Native people is the history of this country. Our nation is built upon the bones of Native people and the blood of slaves, our great shame that too few recognize. I hope we come to grips with our past and present so we can unite and move forward to ensure justice for all. I can hope and do my small part in this life. I feel sorrow And I'm trying to remember that there is good out there too. And with those words, they reflect my sense of spirit right now. And at the last board meeting, I spoke up about the rising tide of discrimination against Asians during this COVID pandemic. And I ask that everyone to look around, to stand up in the face of discrimination everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Rosario. Would anybody else like to say anything? Director Eccles and then Director Lane.
Yeah, I too am heartbroken and horrified by the murders of innocent Black people, including the recent killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery. And unfortunately, this is just the latest in a long history of racism, systemic and institutionalized racism, beginning with the very beginning of our countries when people were brought here in chains under just unbelievable conditions, and also, you know, the atrocities committed against the Native people. And as others have alluded to, it's been ongoing throughout the history of this country, and it's still with us, and it has to stop. And I strongly agree that we should, at a minimum, have a resolution that strongly condemns what is happening and supports Black lives, and also supports the protesters who are trying to make their voices heard at great danger to themselves. I also strongly believe that our employees need to feel safe at work, and not just safe, but welcome and cared for. And so anything that we can do to promote and encourage that kind of an environment, I strongly support. I also want to make sure that our parks and open spaces, of course, they're supposed to be refuges, and I want to make sure that people feel safe and welcome. And so everything that we can do to ensure that the peaceful benefits of our outdoors can be that, and can be that for everyone. Let's also do our part to work towards that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Eccles. Director Lane.
Thank you. You know, during this period of crisis, which is a unique time for us, I just want to say thank you to our employees who have stepped up to help enable our visitors to get into the parks and have the chance to experience what they need in exercise and solace. For myself, I am really distressed at the persistent racism that continues in our country. And I'm remembering that period in the 60s when so many of us participated in the civil rights and had hopes that there would actually be change at that point. I feel that Black Lives Matter, and that it's important to support the protests. And I want to give a tribute to those police officers who, with their chief and their mayors and their councils, have worked to bring a different paradigm to public safety. And I know how many of them are upset about what has happened and continues to happen inappropriately from public safety officers. And I also want to pay tribute to our governors and elected leaders who have reacted to what is going on with empathy and intelligence during this time, and say that my distress certainly spills out into knowing that our president is not up to the task. So thank you for the chance to say just a few words, and I appreciate all of your comments.
Thank you very much, Director Lane. Director Wieskamp?
I guess I'm thinking of Whitney Dodson and the Dodson family and their strength in over the years, and what they accomplished is added to our wonderful park system, the Dodson Family Marsh. And I think if more people would get to know people, as we all on this board and I think employees and everybody else got to know Whitney, and just talk to each other and enjoy that same space, I do think it makes a difference to be out in a park, on a trail, together. And I know our staff has worked very hard to encourage people of color to come into the parks and enjoy them. And I so respect what everybody's done, everything you've said. It is not an easy time and it's not an easy goal, but I'll say it's worthwhile for all of us to work together, our staff, our board, and the public who care, get to know each other and work together. And that's the only way it's going to happen, is knowing each other. I never knew anybody like Whitney before, and I really came to just think he's one of the nicest, best, most caring persons I ever knew. I looked upon him as a friend, and that's what we need to talk about, making each other friends. Doesn't matter what your color is. So I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Director Wieskamp. Would anybody else like to comment? Director Coffey, then Director Waspy.
I appreciate all the comments my colleagues have made, but in particular, Ellen, I really appreciated what you said, and you were certainly speaking for me in your rundown on all of this, and so I very appreciate that and want to say thank you.
Thank you, Director Coffey. Director Waspy?
Yeah, I just like to say that I would echo my fellow board members' sentiments. It was an awful tragedy this whole last week and throughout history. I don't get it. We don't seem to learn. It seems so simple. We need to learn to live together, and I don't know that we're ever getting there. I am hopeful. Having worked for the Park District for 45 years, I think that the Park District is a safe and a welcoming place for everyone. And I'm encouraged by that. And I think the Park District is a refuge for all of the craziness in this world.
Thank you very much, Director Waspy. So because of the Brown Act, we're not able to pass a resolution today. We always think about that Brown Act. But I would like to, on behalf of the board, to ask staff to prepare a resolution for our adoption at our next meeting, which of course would include the condemnation of the murder of George Floyd, racism, and all of the other terrible, tragic deaths and other terrible occurrences impacting people of color and all people for that matter. But in particular, what we've experienced over the last few weeks. I'm sorry, I can't talk very well today. But if I'll ask the general counsel to comment on what she can bring back to us in a week.
So first, I know the general manager feels the same way, and when we hear from him, I'm sure he'll repeat this. Thank you all for your very thoughtful comments. We look to our elected officials for these kind of statements, so thank you. It's very meaningful to your employees and I think the public. And we will prepare a resolution reflecting the sentiments of the board and bring that back for adoption at the June 16th meeting.
Thank you very much, General Counsel, or Chief Counsel, or Counsel. Sorry, not doing too good today. With that, thank you very much, everybody, for your comments. Much appreciated and very heartfelt. Our next item on the agenda is our special update from the General Manager on the status of our East Bay Regional Park District emergency during our COVID-19 pandemic. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you very much, President Corbett, and thank you, board members, for your comments. We all feel this sad time very deeply. Our parks are public spaces where we want to welcome everyone, and there's just no question, and that's why we've been working so hard to keep our parks open, to get more of them open, and to have our staff feel safe, and to do our jobs to help people get through these terrible times. We've now surpassed 100,000 deaths in the United States of America. We have an incredibly bad economic climate affecting so many people of color, affecting so many people of low income now, who are the frontline workers to help us get through and help us get back. This is a time where I think the district and our employees and everyone that can should remain humble, listen, and offer our parks as a safe, inclusive, peaceful, and welcoming place of respite, recreation, recreation is an important part of the whole philosophy of parks. The vision of the Park District states that our parklands will forever provide opportunity for a growing and diverse community to experience nature nearby. We are a regional system of regional parks. We're not a city parks or just county parks. We serve all, and all are welcome, no matter where they live, whether they are close to an existing park or further away. We invite all to a welcoming, beautiful nature and an opportunity for peace. We are all in this together and need to be united in solving the injustice that happens in a divided country, a very divided country. The East Bay Parks and Trails strive to be inclusive places for all, and we can always do more. We can always do better for social equity and environmental justice. It is a foundation of parks, and particularly of our park district. These are the commons. They belong to the public, and they are places of public peace and quiet and health. In the late 1800s, Frederick Law Olmsted said that rapid population growth, industrialization had created an economic disparity, and that materialism that undermined a sense of community and equity. Olmsted believed that healthy society, including parks, was to bring people together in service to each other. I think that is something that all of our employees, our board, and the district has been committed to. Here we are today, over 100 years later, and look what we're facing. The same issues, only perhaps much worse and more divided. The economic and civil unrest really creates the parks to be a very important place, more important than ever, more needed than ever. We need to continue to listen, to learn, and to act. And on behalf of the staff, we are committed to creating a place that strives for those goals, if not completed today, to complete them and take action to make it even better. We also need to support all of our staff, and in particularly now, staff of color. And we do not need to make it clear that we do not tolerate any form of prejudice and strive to have a diverse, safe workforce. I would like to also ask our Alice Kinner, our training supervisor, to be able to comment on some things we are trying to do that I think are pertinent at this time, that we're ready to roll and take action along with Kip Walsh, because listening and learning and training are a big part of addressing these issues. Alice.
Thank you, General Manager Doyle, Board of Directors. In partnership with the Workforce Diversity Committee and leadership from Director Rosario and late Director Dodson, your board approved funding to provide training to our workforce to address inequities in this year. I'm happy to announce that we'll be able to offer the pilot of this training this month. While this training is timely to this moment, we have been working on it over the past year, including having focus groups with staff to understand how we can best co-create a culture of belonging at the district. Based on staff feedback, this training will go beyond implicit bias, taking a deep dive into microaggressions and tools on how we can interrupt bias in the workplace. This is an important step in continuing to train and attain a well-qualified and diverse workforce, which reflects the communities we serve. And I want to thank you all for your support and leadership.
Thank you very much, Alice. And I thank you also for calling to our attention the work of Director Rosario and Director Dotson, who we all miss very dearly. Thank you very much.
And President Corbett, I would also like our police chief, Assistant General Manager, Anthony Chaburo, to express his thoughts during this time. I'm extremely proud of a well-trained professional park police and public safety division. And I think I'd like to have the chief make some comments about what they're trying to do.
Thank you, General Manager, and welcome, Chief Chaburo. I just want to let the board know too that Chief Chaburo made some wonderful statements at the EOC the other day that I'm sure he will share with us as well. And thank you, Chief Chaburo.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Good afternoon, Madam President, Board of Directors, esteemed colleagues, and the general public who are with us. I thank you for this opportunity. Yes, we are a highly trained police department. We continue to undergo the training that was discussed just now by Alice Kinner. We look forward to more of that. California is a lead in terms of that type of training. So we are highly trained, and what we do is consistent with the rest of the state. I would also like to thank and commend the members of public safety. Throughout the COVID-19 crisis, throughout the last 7 days, they've encountered people who have resisted. They have encountered people who are in a mental crisis. And each time they have responded with poise, professionalism, and precision. And that's a tribute to them, to their training, and ultimately my command staff. I am grateful for the work they do, and I'm thankful to be here at the district. I have made it clear, as have my command staff and VR training, that what we are discussing, the reason we're having these conversations, is absolutely unacceptable here. Absolutely. At the same time, as a 31-year veteran of law enforcement, as a chief of police, as an American, I offer condolences to the family of Mr. Floyd, to the state of Minnesota. We grieve with them. And I think more importantly, when I say that, we as Americans, we grieve with them. What happened is horrific. It is unacceptable. It is a tragedy, and it should not have happened. And that recent tragedy is only underscored by the deaths of protesters and police officers over the last 7 days. And again, I condemn those actions. My command staff does, and my department does. And it hurts to see people standing there and not doing anything. And that is one of the most difficult things, other than the death of Mr. Floyd. In conclusion, I will end with a call to action that we all recognize as Americans. We recognize in law enforcement that we have a long and difficult road to travel, that many times in the past, the same things have been said. We acknowledge that. We acknowledge the difficult journey which we are starting, and we will continue to advance.
Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for your service and for the service of all your staff and everybody else at the district. I just will make one more comment on the sad situation that we're in right now in America. But as you all recall, President Obama said we really needed to have a conversation that hasn't really happened. I feel now that when progress was starting on that conversation, we have gone completely the wrong direction. Our role is to provide safe places and a refuge for people in a time of need. I think we're doing that, but I think on behalf of the staff, we can do more, we will do more, but we also have to be prepared to listen. And it is hard now to go into just the basics of what we've been faced with, which is the terrible tragedy of COVID. I do have a couple of things that I have to say about that. First of all, thank you to all the staff, including everybody who worked Memorial Day and that weekend to keep our parks open. We will be opening 2 more parks today, Mission Peak. And I do want to remind us all that that is a regional park that's owned by the city, and we are working with the city to try to address the issues there. But we did have time to really spiff up the parking lot and do additional striping for parking, do a lot there in the meantime. But we will ask that the city and the neighborhood support the need for everyone that needs to go to a park to go to the park, no matter where they live. Also, as you know, we have placed PSAs with the health messaging on those, asking people to bring a mask to a park, to wear a mask. It is my understanding that there will be additional health orders between the 2 counties sometime this week to ask, because of the resurgence of growth and virus spread in Alameda County, there will be additional requirements for wearing a mask and the distances of mask wearing. We don't have those orders yet. But it is our intent to do our best to implement that direction, and that is a challenge. We will implement it across both counties to be consistent and to be, the messaging is clear. I do want to express my deep appreciation for Public Affairs and our sign shop for having to practically do a new sign every week in all our parks, and the staff to get them out there. The public education is really critical for that time. And finally, I think the board is very aware that we now have a 2 countywide 8 p.m. curfew, and we are adhering to that curfew at least through the end of this week or through Thursday so far. We don't know. As you're all aware, our resources in the park system are extremely stretched, are limited, and we're doing our best we can to adapt and to provide the necessary public safety and health safety for our staff and the public. But it is not without its challenges that seem to be changing every day. So again, my deep appreciation for the staff at all levels, and my pride, concern for staff, and my pride in this great East Bay Regional Park District and its employees. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. General Manager. Thank you for those great comments. And, you know, I hope we continue to have our conversations, our quiet conversations, our conversations across departments. I've, you know, on the EOC and some correspondence that I've seen, I have seen some really amazing statements and conversations occurring between individuals in our departments. I just encourage all of our staff to continue to reaching out to each other, talking to each other, sharing their feelings at this time, and continuing to direct their commitment to the Park District as a way to move us all forward as well with these amazing resources we have to share, and allow for comfort during this time of great pain and sorrow. So thank you very much, Mr. General Manager.
Thank you, President Corbett. Just a reminder that our Human Resources Department provides a lot of services, including counseling for employees, and want to encourage people to take advantage of those resources in our HR department, and they're ready to serve and ready to help.
Thank you very much. All right, our next item on the agenda is our consent calendar. And Madam Clerk, are there any items on the consent calendar that people wish to discuss?
Madam President, I only had one question, and then that came from you. Item E, which is authorization to award a contract to Weldon Exhibits for design, construction, and installation of Del Val Visitor Center exhibits, Del Val Regional Park. And your question was that you would like to hear from staff on how they are taking into consideration the new reality of social distancing in designing projects, especially indoor projects. And we have quite a few people on the meeting that can assist you in responding.
Okay, thank you very much. Whoever would like to enlighten us, please do.
I would like to start. Hi, this is Carol Johnson, Assistant Manager of Public Affairs. And I would like to introduce our Creative Design Manager, Jonathan Hobbs, who can give more insight into this beautiful exhibit that is in production as we speak. Jonathan?
Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Good afternoon, members of the board, Madam President. When we design exhibits for a space, the space is usually pretty well defined, and we're normally designing for a crowd of people. So 35 kids, 40 kids. So our exhibits, the physical design of the exhibit is usually for a large group of people. In social distancing, which didn't seem to exist before 3 months ago, I think what happens now is that if we limit the number of people who are experience the exhibit, then we have fewer people in the space, and the exhibits are naturally kind of spaced far apart from each other. So I think the solution to social distancing is to just limit the number of people, and then direct the people via wayfinding to between the exhibits.
Okay. And was Ira going to say something? I see him on the screen. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you, Madam President. This is Ira Bletz, Regional Interpretive and Recreation Services Manager. Jonathan is correct. With the space at Del Val, we have designed it to be able to spread people out among the exhibits, and with the advent of the necessity for social distancing, we would then use staff or signs or stanchions, whatever we need to create a flow through the space. And if we have to, limit the number of people coming into the space at any one time. And so that is the type of plan we're looking at for our existing visitor centers. And by the time the Del Val Visitor Center is open, we will have some experience with that.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that information. Director Rosario?
Hi, thank you. Just a follow-up question regarding not particularly this site, but like in the future, would there be possibilities for incorporating an opportunity for the public to like propose art projects or maybe incorporate public art in some of these installations?
President Corbett, this is Jim O'Connor, AGM O'Connor.
Hello, AGM O'Connor.
Director Rosario, good question. We have started doing that in some of our exhibits. You may recall at the Big Break Visitor Center, we have a large video screen in the Visitor Center. And one of the things we do is we do post videos and pictures that people take out in the park. And that was the intent of that video screen, was to allow for community input into what happens at the Visitor Center. But we have also done art exhibits at the Coyote Hills Visitor Center, part of an annual exhibit we do with children's artwork. So yeah, there would probably be a possibility to do that at Del Val also. Good point.
Thank you very much. Director Lane and then Director Coffey.
Well, I'm really glad to have the visitor center people here, because I am wondering about how our planning is going to begin to open our visitor centers.
AGM O'Connor, do you want to?
I'll address that one. Both Chief Casabon and Ira have been working closely with Dave Zuckerman to come up with a plan. We're in the operations division working closely with all of the divisions in the district to come up with what we call our reoperation plans. Essentially, we're trying to answer the question is, how do you run a regional park system under social distancing? And so the visitor centers are definitely part of that thinking and that planning process. So we're all treading a new territory here. How do you do camping under social distancing? How do you do picnicking under social distancing? So we're working on those plans, and we'll be sharing those with the executive team and with the board in the near future. And I look forward to having a discussion about that.
Thank you very much. Anne, did you want to say anything? There you go.
You're talking to me, Director Corbett?
Yes, I was asking if you wanted to say anything. I saw you shaking your head.
Oh, Ann Casabon, Chief of Interpretive and Recreation Services. And as AGM O'Connor was saying, that we are working on a reoperational plan. We are working very closely with Alice Kinnear, who's the liaison for public health departments, on what the orders are, and you know, just hoping to get things moving again.
Thank you very much. We like the sound of that. All right. Oh, sorry. I didn't have the right screen up. Hello, Director Lane. Oh, wait, Director Coffey, I think, had his, I can't, who was first? Coffey or Lane? Go ahead, Director Lane.
I got a short one. So I'm curious if this recommended contractor, Weldon, in Novato, has done other projects for us. And in particular, I was wondering if they were the ones who did the coal mine experience, because I know that was done by an outfit in Nevada.
Director Coffey, Ira Bletz again, Regional Interpretive and Recreation Services Manager. Yes, Weldon Exhibits are the people who were selected to do the coal mine experience exhibit at Black Diamond. We were very impressed with their work, as well as with their proposal for the Del Val Visitor Center.
Well, then, you know, I can only say that Director Lane and I visited the coal mine experience just before it was supposed to open up. And I was very impressed with it. And I'm looking forward to seeing them do some more work for us then.
Director Lane.
Oh, well, all I want to say is a quick thank you to Jonathan and Marianne and his staff for all those signs and the way you got them out and turned around. It was unbelievably wonderful. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? If not, thank you everybody for your presentations, and motion on the consent calendars in order.
So move.
Moved by Director Wieskamp, seconded by Director Rosario. All right, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll, please. I know I usually do on these, but if you could please, thank you.
Yes, Madam President. Director Lane.
Aye.
Director Wieskamp.
Aye.
Director Eccles.
Aye.
Director Coffey.
Aye.
Director Waspi,
Aye.
Director Rosario,
Aye.
and President Corbett.
Aye.
Aye.
Consent calendar unanimously passes.
Yes.
Thank you all very much. All right, next item on the agenda, 2A, was put over and no longer on the approved agenda. So our next item after that is under Finance Management Services Division, approval of the engineer's report for fiscal year 2020-2021, adopt resolution confirming diagram and assessment, order maintenance improvements, and levy annual assessment for the Alameda County, Contra Costa County Regional Trails Landscaping and Lighting Assessment District Number 1, including ZB1 at 5 Canyons, ZB2 at Dublin Hills, ZB3 at Walpert Ridge, ZB4 at San Ramon Hills, ZB5 at Stone Valley, and ZB6 at Sibley Volcanic. And I believe I see Deborah Spalding waving in the wings there.
Hi there. I am sharing my screen. Can you all see this?
We can see you.
I can see me, but not the screen. Try that again.
There we go. It's coming. There we go. It's there.
From beginning. Okay. So good afternoon. Deborah Spalding, Assistant Finance Officer. This is our annual approval of the 2 county trails called ACC1, which includes 6 zones of benefit. If this looks slightly familiar to you, it's because this item comes to you 3 times, and this is the final approval. So first, this came to you on May 5th to initiate the proceedings and to direct NDS, our engineer, to file the engineer's report. On May 19th, this came to you again for preliminary approval of the draft engineer's report and to set the date of the public hearing, which is today. And then it comes to you again this last time for the public hearing and the final approval. So there are actually 5 actions today in addition to hearing this presentation. So you'll receive public comments regarding the engineer's report. You'll then approve the engineer's report, adopt a resolution confirming the diagram and the assessment as set forth in the engineer's report. Then you'll order the maintenance and improvements and levy the assessment as set forth in the engineer's report. And then lastly, adopt a resolution overruling any protests, should there be any. But before we take you through those steps, I'll just give you a little more background and context of this 2 county trail lighting and landscaping assessment district called ACC1. So it was first established in 1993, and that was following several years of work by staff, actually during another recession. And we had funds for constructing trails through our Measure AA bond, but we didn't have funds to maintain those trails. And so that was the intent of creating this lighting and landscaping district. The assessment amount, $5.44 for a single family parcel, has not changed since that time. But in 1995, an additional $2.72 per unit assessment was added. And again, that's been unchanged since 1995. Proposition 218 required us to get that reaffirmed by voters. And so it was in 1996 by 78.5% of voters. Here's a summary of who is paying into this. So it's actually, the assessment is throughout the entire 2 counties, except that in Murray Township and in that Liberty Union High School District in East Contra Costa County, it's a $0 assessment. So it shows up there, but with $0. Public utility owned and church properties are exempt. And also we have what's called a senior discount program, so that seniors with annual income below the poverty level may receive a 50% discount. And then how the funds can be used, they're used to maintain, improve, and service parklands and trails and related access improvements, which includes paved and unpaved trails, regional trails on the current master plan map, vault toilets at various locations, and it also provides funding for
almost 35 FTE, and that includes some of the roads and trails crew, the Alameda County Trails crew, and the Contra Costa Trails crew, among others. And here's a map. It's pretty small, but you can see within the orange boundaries, that is the area where the assessment is actually assessed and where people are paying that $5.44 per single family unit. And here's a partial listing of the 2 county regional trails that this is paying for. I read recently that we have over 200 miles of paved trails, in addition to all of the trails that are within our so now moving on to the 6 zones of benefits. So these were created in the late 90s and early 2000s, and they were each tied to mitigation for various housing developments. So parkland and trails were dedicated in each zone of benefit, and the zone of benefit helps to pay for the maintenance of that new parkland and trails. So they're actually part of the ACC1. And one thing that's different about them is they actually provide for a CPI adjustment. And then just one little side note that community facility districts have replaced zone of benefits as a preferred funding method. And so we don't do zone of benefits, we don't do new ones anymore, we do CFDs instead. And they're just more flexible and they allow for public safety costs to be paid for with that assessment. And so this map shows where those 6 zones of benefit are located. Again, it's really throughout, I guess, the middle part of the district. And here is detail of the number of parcels and the amount of the assessment for each of the zones of benefit. And if you quickly, I have a slide later on, but if you quickly do the math here, you'll see that none of these really garners too much revenue. And so sometimes we can use the funding to pay for like a part of a staff person, or we'll save it up and we'll use it for projects within the zone of benefit area. And again, these amounts change slightly every year with the CPI adjustment. And now we wanted to give a couple slides to talk about some specific zones of benefit in more detail. And I think the general manager may want to jump in here and cover what's on these slides because he has the history of these areas. So I can turn it over to him, or I can tell you what I know, which is not going to be quite as much as he does.
Well, Deb, thank you very much, the general manager. This is the Stonebrae property, and the coloration is why isn't a larger area or some areas excluded? Some of these areas were acquisitions that were done many, many years ago. Some were donations of property. And so I first of all want to say a real sincere sense of gratitude towards Pat O'Brien, who brought the 2 county assessment district vote to the Park District and successfully implemented that, which allowed us to create zones of benefit where developers were required to give open space and agencies wanted us to take it and protect it. And this was a way to defer some, but not all of our costs as part of accepting dedicated open space. So the yellow areas are all really Stonebrae marked is everything to your right of the slide. The crossed hatch is the Bailey Ranch. It says Bailey Ranch Trail. That was the first one up on Walpert Ridge. This is known as the Walpert Ridge area. And so those properties were dedicated with a source of funds. The source of funds are generated both by an estimate of what the cost would be to maintain it annually, but there also is a negotiation saying, how much can we get agreement with the property owner at the time, which is the single vote at the time to create this. So it was a combination of our estimate of what it would cost to manage, but also what the property owner was willing to pay based on the number of units. And so that's why you see a disparity in the different prices. Some were really early, some were later. Today we calculate with the with the CFDs, we calculate the actual cost and we pretty much stick to it. But back then, this was very early on. I think Director Lang will remember there was some very strong opposition by developers to be assessed, because they say that all the new houses are going to pay our taxes anyway. You're double taxing us. And our argument that prevailed was that you want us to take over your open space. So if you want us to do that, you're going to have to pay some extra, because the direct benefit are to those people living right next to the open space and trails. So that's a little bit of history there. But this was 20 years of litigation by others, Sherman Lewis being the advocate in the Hayward Hills to protect open space, fought a battle here to reduce what was going to be a 2,300 unit development on Walpert Ridge, was knocked down to, I think, eventually 600 or something like that. So it was a long process, a lot of litigation, a lot of argument, but the end result was over 1,000 acres of permanently protected Walpert Ridge.
Great, and then there's one more slide here. This is the Sibley Volcanic Zone of Benefit. Again, General Manager, did you want to cover the history of this?
Just very quickly, you can see the area that says Western Hills. That was a mitigation requirement, not just a dedication of open space, but a mitigation requirement for the Wilder Ranch in Orinda, next to Sibley. And that property was required as mitigation by the wildlife agencies. And that is under a conservation easement. And we have not accepted that property yet, but we will accept it. And there will be a funding mechanism as part of that. The cross-hatched OG property is the McCosker property, of which they donated, not required, but donated that property where we're now doing the huge restoration project. And they donated that, including money to do the planning and other funding for that project. So both of these will have a source of funding through the Wilder Ranch development, particularly the Western Hills. And so that's kind of the history there. Again, that's a 20-year, actually in William Penn Mott's oral history, he talks about this property in Orinda that should be all preserved. And the compromise, again, this was going to have a 18-hole golf course, which was eliminated, and a lot more development. So in all these cases, these are negotiated compromises for development and housing, of which we collaborate with both conservation groups, but also the regulatory agencies and the city. The final agreements, Hayward and Orinda, the final decision is made by the cities as a condition of development, not made by the Park District. Our decision is, will we accept the property and under what conditions? So I think that's a pretty good general history. But again, about a 20-year, more than 20-year effort to preserve as much of that area as possible.
Thank you, that was great. All right, so wrapping it up here, this is just depicting the process of the approval for these lighting and landscaping and zone of benefits. So we develop the budget, we bring this to the board 3 times. This is the 3rd time. And where that little circle is, it says you are here. So this is the public hearing, and then the levy will be ordered. After that, NBS, our engineer, will submit this to the county auditor's controller's office, and then it'll get mailed out to the various homeowners and property taxpayers. And then we begin the process again next year. Here are some of the special projects that will be going on for the most part this coming year. In the 2 County Trail LLD area, there'll be some vault toilet installation at Garin, Coyote Hills, and Black Diamond that'll be funded with the funds from ACC1. At Walpert Ridge, the Zone of Benefit 3, there'll be some work done to improve trails, install a restroom and water meters, and then also the Meineke septic system improvements.
And at the Sibley Volcanic Zone of Benefit 6, we've given some funds from the Zone of Benefit to the McCosker Creek Restoration Project. And then here are just a couple pictures of some of the projects underway at Coyote Hills and at Walpert Ridge. Lastly, this is a bit of a fuzzy slide summarizing the assessments and how much revenue they'll bring in. So you can see the ACC1 general zone area brings in about $4.4 million per year, and the other ones are quite a bit smaller than that, but in total it's $4.6 million in revenue that we get from these assessments and zones of benefit. So the actions requested today are to receive public comments, if there are any, to approve the engineer's report, to adopt the resolution confirming the diagram, the assessment, and ordering the improvements and maintenance for the next fiscal year. And lastly, adopting a resolution overruling any protest. And that concludes the report.
Thank you very much for that very complete and easy to understand report. Director Lane.
Thank you. I have seen a lot of history with the Lighting and Landscape District itself and the zones of benefit. And I appreciate Bob talking about Pat O'Brien's work on it, because there was opposition on the part of some of the developers for the zones of benefit. And there were also public that came that didn't like the whole idea of a lighting and landscape district for trails. And I just want to say that when you look at your a tax bill, you see this $5.44 as along with some of the other funds that the Park District receives. And I do want to say that we are very happy to get that. It's over $4 million, but it certainly does not pay for all of our trails, regional or inside the parks. And but it's a welcome amount to help defray the costs. Thank you for your report.
Thank you very much. Director Rosario.
Thank you. Excellent report, Deborah. I just think we need to, going back to the LLD for the two-county, I think we should, we need to rename the Skyline Trail. It should be designated as the Skyline National Recreation Trail.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That's it.
So noted. Any other comments? Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments?
No, Madam President, we do not.
Thank you very much. Mr. GM.
Just that Collins has his hand up.
Oh, I'm so sorry. He's not on my screen right now. My apologies, Colin. Director Coffey, my apologies. I didn't see you.
Well, my video was turned off for some reason by the host. I don't know if they're trying to tell me something, but in any event, I'm curious. We're passing a resolution overruling protests, and I know this is part of the process. Have we got any protests on this one, or have we in the past?
I don't recall ever receiving any, but Deborah.
In the time that I've been here, we have not received any.
Since Deborah Golding's been here for 10 years, she does not recall any protests. I do not recall any protests. It was likely before Proposition 218 was passed that those types of things were happening. Does the general manager remember any activity?
So there's never been any protests. I think in some cases where we don't have a cost of living, we would get some, particularly in the area we need the funding the most, which is East Contra Costa County for the Landscaping and Lighting District. But the history is that we were giving a very, very short turnaround to ratifying our existing assessment districts when statewide legislation was passed. So we were able on the same, I think even on the same ballot, get these ratified. very quickly. I think if we had more time, and we would have included a cost of living where we don't have one, but this was a very quick, urgent turnaround, or we would have been shut out.
Thank you. It's important then to understand that this is a technical requirement and that we aren't in fact overruling any protests.
Correct.
That is correct. And we have our consultant, Tim Suford, is with us today. I don't know if he has anything to add, but I do believe, Director Coffey, you're correct. The state law requires us to go through all of these steps, including that resolution.
Yes, good afternoon. It's Tim Suford here. Just was going to chime in on a couple of things procedural. One is do not forget to open and close the public hearing.
I'm about to do that.
Oh, here we go. We're going to start my video. Good afternoon. I'm not as dressed up as you all, so I hope you don't mind.
Nice poppies, though.
So yeah, procedurally you need to open and close the public hearing. And the odd thing with assessment districts is it sort of lives in negative world versus positive world. We overcome protests, and there's protest ballots to approve them as opposed to affirmative votes. So it's a little bit of a procedural oddity, but luckily we have no protests, so therefore you have a green light.
Thank you. And I would like to hereby open the public hearing on this matter. And once again, I will ask, I'm sorry, I'm repeating myself, but Madam Clerk, are there any public comments during the public hearing?
No, Madam President, we have not received any public comments.
Still none? Last
None.
call.
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, if having heard that there are no public comments, I will hereby close the public hearing on this matter. And members, are there any other questions or comments before we go to the motion to approve the engineer's report, adopt the resolution, and on the assessment and on the assessments? Any questions, comments? Would someone like to make the motion?
Well, I'll make the motion. Can I make the motion for all of the resolutions, or do we have to do them individually?
I think that they are listed here together, but I will ask someone above my pay grade to answer that question.
President Corbett, thank you. And we'd like to take them separately and also get a roll call since we're doing a virtual meeting.
Okay, hang on just a second. Let me just turn to the page to make sure.
That would be the smart way to go. Yes, thank you.
Grab them all. Hang on just a second.
Okay, so I'll move the approval of the engineer's report.
Thank you very much. The approval of the engineer's report, which is at page 70 in your packets, has been moved by Director Lane. Who would like to second that? Seconded by Director Wieskamp. Okay, if there's no further discussion, please call the roll on the motion to approve the engineer's report.
Director Lane?
Aye.
Director Wieskamp? I see her. Director Eccles?
Aye.
Director Coffey?
Aye.
Director Waspy?
Aye.
Director Rosario?
Aye.
And President Corbett?
Aye, that's
Okay.
unanimous.
Yes.
All right, and then the next item is the resolution overruling protests, which is in our agenda at page 72. Would anybody like to make the motion on the resolution to overrule protests?
So moved.
Moved by Director Waspy, seconded by Director Rosario. Please call the roll on this.
Director, yes, Madam President. Director Lane?
Aye.
Director Wieskamp?
Aye.
Director Eccles?
Aye.
Director Coffey?
Aye.
Director Waspy?
Aye.
Director Rosario?
Aye.
And President Corbett?
Aye. Unanimously
unanimous.
adopted. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And hang on. Let me just make sure. Are those the two action items? I do not see another resolution in my packet.
That's it, Madam President.
That's it. Okay, the resolution
Yes.
overruling the protest is in effect allowing for the assessment districts. Thank you very much. As someone already
Thank
just
you.
explained. Thank you so
Yes.
much. All
Thank you,
right.
Mr. Seifert.
Thank you, Mr. Seifert. So members, I just want to ask the general manager to confirm something. The public has asked a question because they didn't hear something earlier. I'm going to ask the general manager to confirm it, and then I'm going to call for a quick 15-minute break. So Mr. General Manager, are you there? We did have a question from the public. They did not hear the names of the 2 park openings that are occurring this week, which you did mention earlier. So if you could just confirm the 2 parks opening this week.
Maybe we should have the board members confirm those from those areas, but they are they are Point Isabel, which not only includes Point Isabel, includes the access for water-related recreation. We are requiring a leash currently in that park. It's a temporary restraint or condition under COVID, just to keep people safe. And the other one is, which you received corresponds today on, is Mission Peak. Both of those areas are open. And if you have any questions, I'm sure Jim O'Connor could answer those. Very, very appreciative of the fine work that the staff has done to take advantage of the closure to get everything up to date and up to snuff. So we're asking for the public support of all the COVID health requirements, but we are opening up yet 2 more areas in the Park District. Very, very pleased with and appreciative of our staff.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Director Coffey has his hand up.
Just reminded me to ask, what's the status of Ardenwood?
What is this? I think I'll have to ask Jim O'Connor, Assistant General Manager Jim O'Connor, to come on if he can. There he is.
Hello, AGM O'Connor.
Hi, good afternoon, President Corbett, members of the board. Ardenwood remains closed. As per my earlier comments, we're working on our reoperation plans, and Ardenwood will be part of that. Obviously, the challenge with Ardenwood and Little Farm at Tilden is the concentrated use that both those parks attract because of the farm exhibit. So that's something we have to think through carefully under the new social distancing rules. So yeah, quite a bit of challenge park staff have ahead of them, and we're working through it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much, AGM O'Connor. And with that, board directors, please, we're going to take a quick 15-minute break. So please be back on at 3:25 and ask the public for their patience for 15 minutes. We'll be right back. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Andrew, could you pause the YouTube link, please? And share. Touch anything else?
I don't know.
It's 88 in San Leandro, Ann.
Video has started.
Yes.
All right,
Thank you,
everybody.
Andrew.
I think are we live, Andrew?
Yep.
Oh no.
Okay, we're live, everybody. Are all the board members present and accounted for?
Live, I believe so.
Great. All right, then we will proceed. Thanks for coming back. The next item on the agenda is item number 4, board and staff reports, actions taken by other jurisdictions affecting the Park District. Mr. General Manager.
Thank you very much, Madam President. This item is the Phase 2 expansion project for the Los Vaqueros Reservoir As the board's aware, the Contra Costa Water District has proposed an additional raising of the dam to enlarge capacity. This is a project of which they're hosting, and other water agencies would be the contributors to the funding to make that project happen. There's a large MOU with a half dozen of the local water agencies as partners. They also did receive successfully and competed for one of the top statewide water bond grants to do this process. Our comments to date have been focused on the fact that there is state money involved, and there's a public benefit requirement beyond just the local water benefits because of statewide funding. And because it's going to tie into the state water project for the South Bay Aqueduct, we have asked for consideration of additional recreation opportunities, and not necessarily at Los Vaqueros, but Bethany Reservoir, Del Valle Reservoir, places like that, to look at how you could provide additional recreation or balancing of water needs. As you know, Del Valle State Recreation Area has a real problem with balancing water between winter flow and summer flow. So there are times when we don't have enough water or have too much water. Could this tie in with Los Vaqueros help to solve some of those problems? So those have been our comment letters. I'm sure Brian Holt's on the call if you have any additional questions. This is a big project, and it's a future project.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jim. Mr. Holt, would you like to say anything?
Not at all. General Manager covered it perfectly.
Okay, thank you so much. All right. Any other jurisdiction items?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so our next item is also under, it's not item 5, General Manager comments. And we have today a great presentation from Public Affairs and Government Affairs. And Bob, I'll let you go ahead and introduce that.
Thank you very much. This is a combined presentation on our education and communication efforts throughout COVID-19. This was carried over from the last board meeting, and we probably even have updates since then, since the rules and the communications need to change, it seems like weekly, and also more opportunities with legislators to communicate and coordinate on public messaging. So I also want to thank the board for participating in a lot of this, but I will let Carol and Lisa proceed. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate it. And thank you, board, for allowing us to come back this week to present this presentation, the engagement efforts during the COVID response. I would like to ask Monique if she could get the presentation queued up. There we go. Okay. So as you know, I should reintroduce myself, Carol Johnson, Assistant General Manager of Public Affairs and Executive Director of the Regional Parks Foundation. As you know, it is our regular routine and responsibility to communicate with the public about what the Park District is doing. And we have many communication channels and tools that we use. And we have used them all with regard to this engagement effort that we've had to take on. However, we've added some new tactics that I will be sharing with you today. I'd like, first of all, to acknowledge, the entire team of Public Affairs. Each individual on the team has had something to do with our communication process and a project management. I'd like to specifically give kudos to Dave Mason, who is our Public Information Supervisor, with whom many of you have worked with regard to messaging, and you've seen him a lot on the news with regard to this unfortunate crisis. I'd like to acknowledge Juliana Shermer, who is our Chief Administrative Officer of the foundation, because she has had a variety of roles in how we are messaging to the Regional Parks Foundation members and supporters. And she also has backed me up in the very beginning stages of this COVID-19 education program when I had the death of my father. And Jonathan Hobbs, finally. Jonathan and his shop have produced endless numbers, and they are in the shop right now producing more signs that are educating our park users on site at every park regarding what we are asking the public to do when they are at parks. So I'd like to just give that shout out specifically to those 3 members of my team, because they've led the rest of our teams in the activities that you're going to hear. So next slide. Specifically, everything we do communication with the public, we think about in terms of stakeholders. So there are many different stakeholders, as you know, and the general public is a general stakeholder category, but for the purposes of the COVID engagement, here are just many of the areas that we were focusing specifically. The general public and constituent comments that come into the district. Our own employees, of course, they needed to be directed as to what our positions were with regard to closures and things. User groups, of course, a very complex number of user groups. The media, of course, helped us and continue to help us in communicating our messages. Neighbors of our parks, of which there are at least 50,000 within a 1,500 foot range. The county health departments have certainly been with us from day one, working directly with representatives of the park district in communicating to us and our colleagues what they and their actions, what the expectation is with regard to visitors of parks. Other park agencies, we've got many colleagues across the bay, throughout the bay, I should say, that we've been sharing information with and sharing our frustrations sometimes with regard to overuse of parks. Interest groups, of course, there's many of those. Those interest groups may have very loud voices, and sometimes they don't. So we have to work directly with individuals in those categories. Legislators and local elected officials are very important to us because they help to communicate on our behalf, and they've done a very great job at that, and many of you have participated. And then finally, anybody affiliated with the Regional Parks Foundation, and I have members listed here, but there are many ways that the foundation has reached out and assisted us in communicating during this COVID crisis. Next. So with respect to how do we communicate and how do we organize ourselves, it does take strategy, and it does take an expertise about how to message specifically to the groups that we just talked about. Our key top line messages have always been about parks being essential activities. Parks also being open and collaborating with the health departments, and the health departments desiring our parks to be open. Doing our best as we can as the ever-changing situation, especially in the beginning. Literally, we had almost daily updates to the situations as to what the departments of health were requiring. We also have acknowledged we need the public's help. It's not just about us communicating to them, but we need to hear back from them as well. We need them also to do their best in following our guidelines and our rules and regulations. That has been challenging at some cases, but we are seeing more positive actions being taken, especially when individuals are modeling the best behaviors in the parks. It does make a difference to have others see that. Next. So about getting the messaging out, this is what I would consider to be the channels of where we have been communicating most effectively. It starts, of course, with our messaging development, which I just mentioned a little of. We take every incident of communication and we really map out specific acknowledged messages that tell the story of what it is we're asking the public to do or what we would like them to know. Internal communications is one of the ways that we take messages and turn them around for specific internal purposes to educate our public internally and our employees as to what they need to know, what they need to do, how they can find out further information, things like that. We developed a coronavirus webpage. We developed initially 4 public service announcements on broadcast media, which I'll show in a little bit. We've communicated with elected officials. We've sent out 11 press releases over the course of the last 2 months and approximately 180 social media posts across a variety of social media categories, which I'll talk about in a minute. Nextdoor, which many of you may be familiar with, is one of the social media ways that we communicate. But in this case, we can communicate to the entire East Bay individuals who are on that particular social media. There's some 800,000 of them throughout our 2 counties, and we can give very high level messages that way, or emergency messages would be another thing. Email blasts have been very, received great feedback, especially from the foundation. Opinion pieces that we've done early on about the importance and the essential responsibilities of parks and being a respite during these kind of situations. Media partnerships, again, that is something having to do with some of our broadcast media, but because we work with media across the board with the distribution of the Regional and Nature publication, we have some tremendous opportunities to basically get added value, is what I call it, to our media partnerships. Signage in the parks, I mentioned some 2,000 signs have been and are probably still in the parks, and another 200 are being developed as we speak. Virtual town halls, that is something that our government affairs teams have been working on and can talk about later in this publication. Employees and board members are also the ways that we're getting messages out directly through emails and also through direct communication through supervisors and managers, and then constituent correspondence, sorry, that is a typo, correspondence that I'm actually personally taking on upwards of 200 individual emails and written materials that have come in about questions, complaints, issues that we're responding to having to do with the COVID virus and the opening or closures of parks. Next. Here's an example of several, not all of them, of all of the news releases that we've sent out. So you can see that we've been very consistent in the messaging, in the points, in the commentaries, and in the quotes that we have given the opportunity to board members and to our general manager to acknowledge. Next. I wanted to put this in the website. We do regular analytics on the website, and I thought this was an interesting slide. It is not totally up to date. It's as of May 14th, but for the first 2 months of the COVID situation with the Park District, you can see the spikes in terms of where public information was the strongest or most recognized volume of people. So looking at the very bottom, you can see that the page views initially last year in the same time frame were 1 million less than this year's page views from the same time period. The web users, and those are unique users, that is 1 URL per user, is also significantly more this year, 160% increase as a matter of fact. because of, we think, the communication that we were sending out, sending people to the website to get information about what was open, what was closed. And you can kind of see along the way some spikes. Those spikes have to do with when our messaging was fresh or new messaging that came out. So I just thought that it was interesting from the perspective of a year-over-year review. Next. And here is something that we haven't shared either, and that has to do with a little bit of background about who we are reaching in social media. This is just a snapshot in time, but you can see on the left where the cities of URLs are located. So those would be unique users, and City of Oakland is obviously first. Sometimes we have out of town pop in, like San Francisco. That's not surprising. Santa Clara, that's not surprising. But recently I got an update and it referenced that Los Angeles was one of our top categories of where the URLs were based. And I thought, and Sacramento was another one. And while we don't know exactly the reason, we can do a little more digging on that. We think some of that may be because of the way people maybe has to do with students that have URLs affiliated with their schools, or with individuals that you know, are not keeping track of how their URLs are directed under their hometown. They can hide it, so to speak. The age categories, really not terribly surprising because we represent every age group, but in this particular time frame, the age category of 25 to 34 happened to be a particularly high particular number. And it appears that the females actually are more active on our website than male. Social media wise, you can see that Facebook is our primary tool, followed by Twitter, significantly behind, but you can see the percentages. So Facebook is a very important tool for us, and it continues to be. And that's why we put so much messaging out through that particular mechanism. Let's move on. So here's a couple of examples of what some of the media attention look like with respect to areas of local interest with the East Bay Express and with some of our ethnic media. So you can see that we not only got a lot of coverage through the traditional media such as East Bay Times, as you see regularly, or the Chronicle, or even some of your local newspapers in your community. We also have always, and in this case particularly, always gotten a tremendous amount of assistance communicating through our ethnic media partners. Let's move on. Here is just a couple of examples, and we have one that will be added having to do with the signage that has been out there. And from what I understand from operations, you know, when they interact with folks, and I've also heard from when public safety interacts with folks, people are seeing the signs. They're not always adhering to them, I might add, but they are seeing the signs and appreciating that there is direct information relevant to social distancing, relevant to what is expected of them, what they can't do, what they can do. And you can see the wear of mask within 6 feet of others. That may change very soon once we get the new orders from the county health departments. They're likely to require it as more of a mandatory ask. And we will be updating that and then sharing a lot more communication with the public as to that expectation of wearing masks, which is challenging, quite frankly, in many of our parks. Next. So you might have seen, I'm not going to play these, but we did have 4 different public service announcements initially. I think we were the only agency that had these announcements that spoke specifically to the topics of import, packing out trash. That's when we didn't have trash collection, social distancing, no groups, meaning no group participation, picnics, things of that sort, and more general information. And I do have actually, the next slide will show the very first video that we produced and was running for the first month.
Due to the COVID-19 emergency, East Bay Regional Parks are busy and staffing is limited. To keep these parks open and safe, we need your help. Keep a safe 6-foot distance from other people. No picnicking or group outings. And with all bathrooms and water fountains closed for safety reasons, make sure you bring water and go before you go. Some parks and access points may also be closed to maintain safety and limit overcrowding. For latest information, go to ebparks.org.
So what I want to say about that, I'll hold my comment until we see the next public service announcement. And this one was just shot 2 weeks ago and is now in rotation. And this features our health department partners. And the piece that we're going to see is another 30-second spot is with Dr. Right in front of us, who is with Contra Costa County. And he also is our Spanish speaker for this particular PSA. So let's roll that.
Hello, I'm Dr. Rohan from the Contra Costa County Department of Health, reminding you that visiting parks and exercising and enjoying nature is good for the health of your body, mind, and soul. Remember to practice 6 foot of physical distancing from others not in your household, and please wear a face covering. Protect yourself and others too. Stay local, visit a park near your home. Together, we'll get through this.
For more information, go to ebparks.org.
Now, what I want to say is that we have gotten tremendous value from all the media partners. Our very initial investment for the first 4 public service announcements was about $90,000. And that took us through, I think, mid-May. Subsequent to the production of the health officers, we have those in rotation now with virtually every major network and Telemundo and a couple of other ethnic media, radio and television stations. And that purchase agreement was somewhere around $60,000. So for about $160,000, we have received more than 2 months. Actually, I think we're rounding up to moving into our 3rd month of very great visibility to show the public in the East Bay and frankly the greater Bay Area that 1, we're essential, we're open, and here's what you need to do when you come and visit us. But that it's an opportunity for people to see repeatedly the name of EBRPD and realize that we really are an essential part of their current shelter-in-place situation. So we've received lots of positive feedback from those. Let's move forward. Social media posts, as I mentioned in the next couple of slides, will just show you a little bit of the social media that we have done and the rationale behind the social media. Again, we've looked at, we've used Facebook and Twitter. We've used YouTube and we've used Instagram, all important ways to communicate, and we've also used Nextdoor. Our messages are everything from, here's an example of just a basic message to just keep our name and the essentialness of what we do in the public eye. The next couple of slides, move forward, will show the more urgent type of messages that we wanted people to know. This happens to do with Mission Peak Stanford staging temporarily closed Easter weekend and another emergency alert having to do with things that we really needed people to really get and understand immediately and how it would impact their involvement. Visitor information. These are the topical areas that we talked about through broadcast media, no picnics, keeping on our trails, keeping a greater distance with one another. You can see that we also have ethnicity in our imagery. Next. We have different types of recreational activities happening. There's a dog who's on a leash, there's people that are walking along the beach, and there's people, that a parent and a child riding their bikes, again with similar messages, just again trying to respond proactively to showing and modeling the behavior that we want other people to see. This particular group of messages was really focused internally, but it really got a great external response. We really wanted to do something for our, and we're still doing this, but wanted to do something for our employees who are literally in the front lines in any area that they work in, whether it is in the case of Tammy, who's in the stewardship department, or folks in the field such as Ashley and Ringo over there. It really doesn't matter what department you're in. We wanted to acknowledge this is the reason. These are the people that are the reason behind why our parks are still open for you. And the public has just really jumped on the bandwagon and been very appreciative and thankful. And we continue to get feedback every time we post something new. This is the latest of our campaigns, and we really have it focused from the foundation. It's really back at the Park District of how much people love them, or love the Park District. And so you can see that we take real life people. These are real images of people that have been sent to us, and a comment that they've said about the reason that the parks make their lives better. And, you know, we don't make this stuff up. These are truly inspiring quotes and images of people that are, you know, from all around the area enjoying our parks. And I just personally am really proud of this, because I think it says a lot back to us, but it also tells the rest of the community how much people love the Park District. This is an example of how we've asked for interactivity with the public through social media. We've asked them to upload their photos to us so that we can use them for this campaign. It's been very, very positive. And the Regional Parks Foundation has been doing its own, pardon me, on their own channels, focusing similar messaging, but really getting to the root of why the Regional Parks Foundation supports the Park District. And so you can see all these different channels of messaging. Messaging is consistent, imaging is very diverse, the user groups are very diverse, and the feedback has been phenomenal. These are the recent ads that we are currently showing. The foundation is funding under $20,000 for locating ads 4 times in the East Bay Times, as well as 2 times in the San Francisco Chronicle, as well as many local publications, including the Oakland Post, which is a group of about 4 different newspapers, the Brentwood Press, which is a group of about 6 newspapers, and several other local jurisdictions. There are thank you ads directed to the visitors of our parks. Here is an example of a mask that is in production right now for the foundation. And one of the ideas for the foundation to continue to network with people during this time in the parks is to be out there in the parks in an appropriately social distance way to give away some swag. And so this is something that we look forward to doing in the very near future. Masks, bandanas, hand sanitizer. Since we can't have events, we're going to go to the parks. And now I'd like to turn over the rest of the presentation to Lisa Baldinger, who I want to say thank you to as well for a lot of the work that we've worked collaboratively. She'll talk about the government affairs efforts in the same engagement during COVID-19.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Lisa Baldinger, Legislative and Policy Management Analyst with the Government Affairs team. I'll be giving the overview presentation, and then my colleague Eric Feeler will join me for any follow-up questions. So as Carol stated, there was an importance of first determining the messaging that we were going to get out and being on the same page, and then getting it out through as many channels as possible. For those who have, well, I'm sure all of us here have been visiting the parks during this time, we're seeing new users, and and we're seeking as many different channels to share the best practices for the safety of our public and staff through. And so government affairs, we've been in contact with our elected officials, our East Bay delegation, to share some messaging. So on your screen here, you see some emails. We began with these as weekly emails, and now we do them as elements of RISE that we want to share with elected offices so that they can be cognizant of what's going on in the park. So for example, with Easter, Memorial Day, we gave suggestions of alternative activities to alleviate the parks. We shared with them our Naturalist Excellent virtual program as a way for homeschooling and others to continue their environmental education. And so this is one avenue that we've been going through to help to amplify the messages of public affairs. Next slide, please. Along with that, along with having a uniform message as the East Bay Park District, it's also important to be cognizant of what's going on regionally, across the state, and nationally. And so we've been working with our partners at Together Bay Area, which oversees the San Francisco Bay Area, as well as the National Recreation and Parks Association, because though our park users are being encouraged to use their local park, they're still sharing it on social media. They're sharing it on a forum that can cross boundaries, that can spread far and wide. And so we want to ensure that across just quite frankly the nation, folks are using the same safety practices of 6 feet apart, hiking with a face mask or biking with a face mask, and staying safe. We've also been working with California Special Districts Association to amplify the importance of special districts during this time and the role that we've been playing on a for those of you who have been with us or heard us present on our trip to Washington, D.C., a talking point at all times is to remind our delegation to include special districts in legislation as it moves forward at a federal level, because not every state has special districts. So we've been working with their organization. And then lastly, in the bottom right-hand corner, you see a sign that says road closed to through traffic. This is a photo from Oakland, and it's the Slow Streets program. And so we've seen and recognized the benefits of the Slow Streets program to provide additional outdoor recreation amenities close to home for our East Bay residents and others. And so in applaud of Oakland's program, we've also asked other cities to think creatively about spaces that can be used for recreation. Even at our own Crown Beach, where parks are closed, we've seen bikers and rollerbladers utilizing the parking area for recreational and physical enjoyment. Next slide, please. Additionally, on social media, we have our followers on Twitter, but Libby Schaff, Nancy Skinner, Mark DeSaulnier have other followers. And so through our email correspondences, their teams were able to share our messages. And so here we have a number of tweets about how to safely utilize the parks this weekend, a reminder about the importance of exercise while still practicing social distancing. And so those who maybe don't yet follow the district on our social media, but they do follow one of these elected officials, continue to hear our message and are able to safely visit an East Bay park or their local park. Next slide, please. Another avenue is through newsletters. So these are some examples of county supervisors' newsletters where they're able to share information about the park district. As Carol stated in her presentation, we've been using the website as just the place to drive folks to, since that's being constantly updated with the most current information. And so we asked Supervisor John Joya and others to share with their constituents who are subscribing to their newsletters to visit our website for information. And so that's been another avenue that we've been going through to get that safety information out. Next slide, please. All right, so much like all of us who are sheltering in place, we've had a lot of success with meeting with elected officials at this time. They're busy, but they are able to meet with Zoom. And so thank you for those board members who have been able to join us. We've been able to speak with Representative Barbara Lee, Representative Mike Thompson, Eric Swalwell, as well as Assemblymember Rob Bonta, Bauer Kahan, and some staff from Senator Glazier's office. And these conversations are important because not only are we able to hear from them what's going on in the state and federal legislature, but we are able to share with them the role that parks have been able to play at this time, what we're seeing in our parks, the impacts that we're feeling both on our staff as well as on our lands, and get that 30 to 45 minutes of just face time that's really focused on parks. An outcome also of one of these meetings is, next slide, please. We were able to hold our first virtual walk and talk with President Corbett, our naturalist James Frank, and Assemblymember Rob Bonta. And walk and talks have just historically been a wonderful way for government affairs to engage with our elected official in a park where it's that on the ground, they get that intimate park experience to discuss park issues. And so Assemblymember Bonta went out to Crown Beach beforehand. He took a walk in the park. He had a personal experience. And then as part of the discussion, President Corbett and James Frank were able to share what's going on at Crown Beach at this time, as well as just additional safety messages from our staff. And so it was a big success. We're happy to provide the YouTube link to anyone who's curious. Next slide, please. And then lastly is just additional issues that we continue to have conversations on. Here we have our general manager's letter to the editor on the Atlanta Water Conservation Fund. So government affairs, we continue to be in communication with our elected officials on the LWCF discussions, as well as wildfire legislation and the importance of taking precautions early on in the season. And then again, that recognition of special districts and legislation as it moves forward on a federal level. So we just continue our conversations both on recognizing the pandemic at hand, but the other issues that we need to continue communicating on. Next slide, please. Well, that concludes my presentation. Thank you. And I don't know if Carol has any closing words.
I just wanted to say this has been successful because of all of us working together. And when I say all, I mean the entire district. Every division has been involved somehow, some way with our regular communication, whether it's through the EOC or whether it is through very small meeting groups, whether it's presenting at the various committee levels. But we really appreciate the support. We really appreciate all of what we've been able to do because of working really closely together. So with that, I will stop talking. I think General Manager Doyle would like to conclude.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the fine work and talent of the staff on this. Communication is so essential. Just a reminder to the board that within almost 24 hours, I had talked to Juliana Schemmer to get in contact with our media partner, Doug McConnell, to start producing information. We knew that to keep parks open, we were going to have a very fast-paced public education campaign and information. It started with what's open and what's closed. Remember that at that time, that was an environment when everybody was closing their parks. And so having communication with other park directors on a weekly level, how are they doing what? How are they cleaning restrooms? What are they doing in their parks was extremely helpful to me and my leadership to try to advance the board's goal to keep parks open. But I just really, the coordination and talent of public affairs, the foundation, and of legislative affairs is just, in government affairs, just so critical. And I don't think anybody came anywhere near what we were trying to do on communicating with the public. I want to thank the board because your direction was keep parks open for your very first unanimous resolution. So that is the charge we knew we had. We knew we had to make staff feel safer. We knew that we had to get the public to change their behavior. And we knew we needed to update and upgrade all of our communication points of contact to get the messaging out. And I just can't say enough about how much was done. You gave me the authority, directors, to spend some money. And I could not have made a wiser investment for the public on this communication than these efforts. And I think it's something that is unmatched anywhere, and extremely proud of the staff and how we responded to this really challenging emergency. And I'm really happy to acknowledge the field staff for what they're trying to do to keep the parks open, and appreciate the foundation and public affairs efforts. So I really think we tagged all the bases, maybe even threw in an extra base. But I think it was really a wise decision to get this communication out. I really wanted to make sure that the foundation was involved to keep their members who were saying, what can we do to help, and engage them. And part of that was their agreement to pay for advertisement to express some appreciation. There was so much negative information and fear that having a thank you out there and having appreciation for those who were modeling the behavior we want was just critical. And so I think this has been and will continue to be an ever-changing success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bob, and thank you, Carol and Lisa and the entire team. I want to give a little shout out to Dave Mason, who's always very busy, especially even every single weekend where he's like taking those calls and putting out the quotes and pulling Bob in on a Zoom interview or sometimes me. Thanks, guys. I'm going to have a little bit more to say during my comments about a little project that I was just involved in with everybody, where I'll give some more thank yous. But thank you, everybody. That's awesome. And we are getting the word out. I think we've done more to get the word out about the public health issues than anybody anywhere in the Bay Area. So kudos to everybody. And I gave a lot of thank yous at the foundation meeting last Thursday to the foundation for their role in this and their support as well. So thank you so much. Board members, any comments, questions?
Announcements from closed session.
Yes, just wanted to see if anybody had any comments on this report. Anybody? Yes, Director Waspy.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
Well, just to comment, I think this is an incredibly successful program. The information program and the legislative program, working with our legislators. They've got a lot of time. They want to help. And this was a great time to engage with them. Just a comment, it's funny, I love those public service announcements. I love seeing it. And Carol, I don't know if, did all of your staff join the Screen Actors Guild and become actors? Because I see a lot of people I know and they all look great.
Yeah.
Director Lane.
Yeah, so too, several people have talked to me about the PSAs and how good they thought those were. And I was particularly pleased to open my Sunday East Bay Times and see that big Regional Park Foundation ad. I think it was, and it was with all bad news in all of the columns, to see a really cheerful, punchy Park District picture like that was very gratifying. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Thumbs up, everybody? Yep. All right. Thank you all very much. Thanks for all that great hard work. So the next item, Madam General Counsel, do we have any announcements from closed session?
Board President Corbett, we have no announcements from closed session.
Thank you very much. Okay, it's time for board comments. Who would like to go first? Anne, would you like to go first? Director Wieskamp?
Of course. I'm celebrating, this is the first Zoom since our last board meeting. And while I think they're worthwhile, my goodness, they are exhausting. I've asked Sharon Clay, if any of you did not see the Sunday Chronicle, in their insight section, Life in the Pandemic, How to Cope with the Zoom Boom. It is very worth reading. It certainly helped me to understand, talks about mental weariness results from trying to identify in the facial expressions on a computer screen all the details we're used to getting in real life. So I think you'll get that, and I hope you'll read it. I think it's very worthwhile. As usual, I've been checking in with our various supervisors, other people. I talked to Gordon today. What an upbeat guy to have such a huge territory to manage. He said Mission Peak was quiet, no problems, which was great to hear. And that the opening at Sunol was very popular, but most people were going down to Little Yosemite. This is more for Dee than anybody else. I was talking to Kelly Barrington, and he has some thoughts on residences and the good and the bad and the ugly and what we need to think about before we do much. So Dee, you and I better have Kelly called into one of our Zoom meetings. He may hate me for that. And hear for what he's got to say, because he's a very pragmatic person and I think he would be very helpful. What most people I see throughout the communities, people want to know when and if we're going to have access to water. Since it's 99 in Livermore today, there are probably more people out there now thinking, well, they may be in the water. I don't know. But I think they're really, I know staff is planning. I've talked to Jim about it. So I hope we can come up with a safe way to have some access to water in the hot season coming up. And the last person who I actually caught today was Shelley at Del Val. And she said they had done their work on those upper trails. People were very grateful. They were not having as much pressure on the access at down below. As you know, you've been hearing about the Arroyo, people getting ticketed. Lots more people were coming back and using that upper section. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Wieskamp. Anybody else like to go next? Director Lane, how about you?
Thank you. I have been getting out in the parks a little bit more, and we are having some major congestion at a couple of the trails in Alamo. Camille has quite a few cars, but Hemi in particular is full of cars. And so I have been talking a little bit to the county supervisor about it, so she's not surprised when people call her about it. And lots of Iron Horse. I'm watching a lot of Iron Horse Trail people in downtown Danville, and yesterday they ended up boarding up the museum and a lot of downtown Danville because a parade and some of the bad guys evidently talked about getting there. So we don't know whether that will be going on today or not. It's pretty distressing to see plywood up on windows like this, as you might imagine. A couple of meetings, I think we had a legislative committee meeting. Sometimes I don't cross off all the meetings, but I'm pretty sure we had one of those. And then yesterday I had a Zoom meeting where I brought a PowerPoint that Brenda Montana had put together for me with the Danville Rotary. And that went really well, really, because of the PowerPoint. But you do have a chance to remind people about the challenges that we faced as an essential service. And a couple people shared their trail experiences with me. Went up to Sycamore Valley Open Space today with a friend kind of early. And we went all the way up to the top, and you could see the area that is going to come to Sycamore Valley Regional Open Space when the McGee Preserve is underway. And there are fabulous views up there. At one point, we went up to look at one, and you could see the Ohlone at one end, and you could see Tilden across as another view. So it's really, really a pretty park, and lots more people than there used to be there. A friend of mine sent me a video that was an interview of Jack Roddy, and I can't remember whether I think I sent it to you, Colin.
Yes.
And I sent it to a couple of other people because they showed wonderful pictures of the prospective Deer Valley Park. And I think he and his wife have now moved. So that's all our park now. And it's indeed a beautiful park. And he said when he first came there were no trees. So when you go and look at that and you see the trees that are over that expanse of the ranch, that's part of their taking care of it over many, many decades, I guess. Then for myself, I'd like to get some more information from staff about visitor center opening plans and picnic tables. I'm beginning to see people just perching on those tables, and we're having some pretty hot weather here. So, Anne, I'm glad you mentioned the water. One of the things that happened when Contra Loma was first created was the fact that in the hot weather, people really get to water. And that was during the 60s when there were some disturbances that are somewhat similar to what we have now. And as we get warmer, I think if we need to figure out how people can get into our lakes, because they are a sense of relief for people as they reach them. So I think that's all I have, but I'm glad to see all of you again, and glad we managed a successful Zoom program.
Thank you, Director Lane. Director Eccles.
Hi, thanks so much. Yeah, so I had the opportunity on the 20th to speak at the Wildfire Canyon Fire Response Group, which was co-hosted by Supervisor Joya, and spoke about the East Bay Regional Park District's wildfire preparedness, particularly in the East Bay Hills, and was delighted to have Fire Chief Tile and Assistant Fire Chief Gallup join me in that. It was very helpful to have them answer questions along with me, because obviously they know a whole lot more than I do. So that was great. Attended the legislative committee meeting Friday, the 22nd. And as always, appreciate all the very useful information and updates that we receive from staff and our consultants in Sacramento and Washington, and our GM as well during those meetings. Of course, you've already heard that yesterday Point Isabel opened. Very excited about that. Wanted to thank GM Doyle and Assistant GM O'Connor along with their team to all working together to make that happen. Also want to thank the various groups that were involved in getting the message out to their members and working to open the park safely. And in particular, wanted to thank the windsurfers at Point Isabel and PIDO, the Point Isabel dog owners, for their help in doing that and working to open the park and do it in a safe way. I had the opportunity to visit Point Isabel yesterday with my daughter, and it was great. It's just such a treat. It's such a special place, and there was a good mix of windsurfers and dog owners and dogs, and one kayaker, and all wearing masks, all 6 feet apart, all modeling great behavior. So it was a real treat. Also, just for myself, my daughter and I have been walking regularly in Tilden Park to the point where she's collected so many photos that she wants to write a book. So that's good, especially with school ending, what school we had ending a week early. I'm glad that she'll have that opportunity. And I wanted to echo some of the comments from other board members in terms of, continuing to open up the parks and particularly, particularly for the families who now it's summer and most of the camps are closed. And so certainly to the extent that we can safely open water and open picnic areas, that would be great. I also want to really encourage those few camps that have managed to jump through all the hoops to meet the new county requirements, which include having just 12 campers or 12 groups of, small groups of 12 or fewer campers isolated in different spots and maintaining a stable group, just those campers for 3 or 4 weeks. You know, to the extent that we're able to get those folks into the parks and able to use the use our sites sooner rather than later, that would make a huge difference. I know, you know, from personal experience, all of my daughter's camps were canceled, particularly all of the Tilden camps and the other City of Berkeley camps. And so, you know, those who are able to meet the new requirements, it'd be really great to be able to help them do so. So that is my plea from parents of the East Bay who want something fun and healthy and safe for their kids to do this summer.
Thank you very much, Director Eccles. Director Rosario?
There we go. I am ready. Thank you. So on the 20th and the 27th, I attended the COVID task force. And I think in those meetings, we agreed to meet every other week now. So we get a break for this week and we'll meet again on the 10th. And I think those talks are, again, that I have nothing good to say. I mean, I have everything good to say about that committee. And then on the 21st, I attended the Housing Ad Hoc Committee with Director Wieskamp, and I think we're making some headway. And then on the 21st, attended the Operations Committee meeting. And then also on the 27th, I attended the Finance Committee meeting. And then on the 28th and 29th, I attended the CARPED conference, and congratulations to General Manager Bob Doyle on his award, and Regional Parks Foundation and Public Affairs for their awards. Very well received. And I have to say this, despite the fact that we couldn't go to Tahoe in person, it was a very good conference. In particular was the last session presented by Patricia Eggers. She presented protocols for reopening, and which included, and as soon as I checked today, they're not posted yet, but I wanted to forward those to Dr. Ana Alvarez and Kip Walsh and the rest of the COVID-19 team to take a look at those. They're very comprehensive guidelines, which includes testing. Once we open, they're recommending testing everyone once every 4 weeks and allowing employees to take the time to do that, and also consider taking temperatures. And they had lots of recommendations on leaves and explanations of what the different various things are. So it was a very, very productive conference. And Dennis, good job being Mr. President. And then let's see, lastly, I'm really looking forward to Alice Kinner said, alluded to the unconscious bias training that's going to start soon. And I know we were going to start much earlier, but COVID-19 prevented that, but I'm looking forward to that happening. It needs to happen. And I just wanted to give a shout out to the leadership of Dr. Alvarez and Kip Walsh on that committee, as well as the HR staff there. Very wonderful, and we're focused, and I think we'll get to where we want to be. We're headed in the right direction. And also, I wanted to ask that we close the board meeting in recognition of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, just 3 of the many African Americans who've died at the hands of law enforcement and vigilante groups. And also,
and Dee, I'll come back to you at the end so you can do a full adjournment.
Yeah.
If
And
that's
then I
okay.
just want, yeah. And I wanted to give a shout out to our police officers. I know in this recent outbreak of looting, and our officers, I'm sure, are fulfilling our mutual aid agreements. And I just want them to know that I congratulate them for being there for their fellow officers, but also that I really appreciate their professionalism and their adherence to protect and serve. And I credit Chief Burrow for stressing that over and over, because that's what we're all about, and we are all public servants, and we all are. We all do that. That's our mantra: protect and serve. And so, with that, I give it my minutes to the next board of director.
Thank you, Director Rosario. Very nice comments. Did you see those thumbs up for you? Director Coffey?
Sure, thank you. Just to piggyback a little on what Elizabeth was saying on takeaways from being in the parks recently. Mine was as well that there is a very strong yearning for family picnicking. And, people are just finding spots. They're not using our picnic tables, but they're finding spots anywhere. I'm hoping that management is working with the health officials to figure out protocols for making a picnic table available to families in the near future, if it proves safe, if there's some safe way of doing that. On the 22nd, I attended the Hercules Democratic Club by Zoom and presented on the status of the parks. On the 27th, I attended the Finance Committee, and with Dennis and Dee attended on the 28th and 29th the Carpet Conference, and was also pleased to see Dennis elected president of the organization, and our general manager being recognized as General Manager of the Year, and the awards presented to the foundation and our public affairs outreach program. Yesterday, I met with Brian, Christina, and Carol Victor to discuss the dissolution of the Knightson Community Service District, which is going to undergo a LAFCO dissolution process in the near future, and what the implications of that was for our Nunn property out in Knightson. And in closing, last Saturday, Mila and I spent the day at the new Bay Trail segment at Golden Gate Fields. Awesome, just almost as awesome as the Knoll Shores Bridge, and certainly comparable views. The entire complex that this district has put together in that segment of Bay Shoreline between that new Bay Trail, Albany Beach, the work that's been done there, new staging area that's almost complete. It's just fabulous. It's a huge improvement to that area of Bay Shoreline, and people were thoroughly enjoying it last Saturday. So I'll end with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Coffey. Director Waspy?
Thank you. On the May 20th and 27th, I attended the COVID task force meetings, as Dee said, very productive meetings, and we're going to every 2 weeks now, and I consider that an incredible success. I think when the task force was first started, there was lots of what's the word I would use? Suspicion, wonderment. Information wasn't transferred as well as it could have been. I think it's been incredibly successful. I think we worked our way out of business. We're doing so well. I think that we just don't have agenda items anymore. All of the questions are answered really quickly. some of the protocols are very clear. They're vetted by everyone that's involved. So I really applaud the people that are responsible for this, and especially Dr. Ana Alvarez and her crew, Catherine Dudney, Chief Chiaburo, Kip Walsh, and Jim O'Connor. You guys had a really hard job at first. You got a lot of criticism, but you answered the call, and I think you did an excellent job. And I also compliment AFSCME 2428 and the Police Association. It got cooperative there and really worked. On the 21st, I attended the Operations Committee meeting, and the 22nd, the Legislative Committee meeting. I'm glad these committees are back working. We're doing good work and getting things done. So I'm really happy about that. On Memorial Day, I did a tour, my tour of Ward 3, so to speak, or some of it. I went to Cull Canyon, Don Castro, and hiked at Lake Chabot. Lots of people, as Elizabeth and Colin were saying, people were, they were social distancing, but they were coming with theoretically family members, and they would space out, but they were on the lawn, but they were clumped together with the folks they know or trust or whatever. But they were social distancing in their own way. It's an interesting dynamic, and I think we're dealing with the best we can, and I think well, I hope we can open up soon. When I went to Cull Canyon, I met the staff there, and it was great to find out, and it's interesting and sad in a way that throughout this pandemic, we're all sheltering in place, not seeing each other, not being as social. I just found out that Victor Reyes, the park supervisor at Cull Canyon, is going to retire at the end of the month after 19 years with the park district. A great, great guy. It's a shame we can't have a party for him. I hope we can do something. He's a really, really good guy. On the 28th and 29th, I attended the Carpet Conference, and it was really, I enjoyed it. I would have rather been in Lake Tahoe, but I congratulate all the people that won awards. I'd like to give a shout out to the fuels crew, fuels reduction crew. They were in my backyard this week, and they had 8 or 9 crew members on weed eaters, and they just flew down that 10 Hills Trail, went all the way from Lake Chabot to Redwood Road. And I spoke to a crew member and I said, geez, where are you going from here? And it was one of those great quotes. If you know Mike Sweeney, the fire captain that's in charge of that crew, he said, well, I talked to Captain Sweeney, and he said, we're going to start in Castro Valley and we're going to go till we get to Richmond. So I believe that will happen. And a big shout out to that crew. They're doing great work. And just a question, if I may, are the goats working nowadays? And I guess that's a question for Mr. O'Connor.
Only while they're social distancing.
Yeah. Is Jim around, or does anybody know if there are goats?
He's here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, most of the goats are run by the fire department, so I don't know the answer to that at the moment, but we can get to that answer.
Okay, great. That'd be interesting. And I don't know that I would be, I don't know that I saw a troubling letter from a constituent that we all did about a needle stick at Point Isabel. And I'm very concerned about that and the safety of our employees. And I don't know what we do with that, but I sure think that that's a big player in this whole issue that everybody's facing all the time. But employee safety is an incredible one. And I know that during the AIDS epidemic, a needle stick was one of the scariest things you'd think about when you were emptying garbage, just doing the work that park rangers do when you have a transient population that comes in and out and in and out and in and out. So I know we're addressing it, and I hope we deal with that.
Thanks, Director Waspy. I don't know if Chief Chiaburo wants to weigh in on any of that, the goats or anything. I know
sure
it's fire, but
I just did sign the contract for the, yes, Madam President, I just signed the contract for the goats. So that is coming, and we will be utilizing goats this year. There was a little delay due to COVID in terms of employees, in terms of the actually goat herders. So a little bit of a slowdown there, but the contracts have just come across my desk.
Excellent.
Thank you very much, Chief. I was smiling because I know that that makes Director Coffey very happy as well. Okay. Thank you for that. Let's see, what have I been doing besides sitting in front of this screen talking to people? So on the 20th, I attended the the City of Alameda Liaison meeting. Great opportunity to talk about our projects going forward in Alameda. And, you know, obviously Encinal Beach and Tidewater Beach, as some people, no, not Tidewater Beach, I'm sorry, I'm not remembering the other name of the beach, but the preferred name of the beach by Breakwater Beach project was mentioned, and also, of course, our work on the former Naval Air Base and how we're going forward. So thank you for that. On the 21st, I attended the Operations Committee meeting, and I also attended the EOC meeting that day. And Dennis, I just want to mention at each EOC, part of the report includes work that the fuels crew is doing. So I'm so glad you brought that up. The fuels crew has not relented. They have been out every single day. They have not been slowed down at all. They're using proper protocols and doing what needs to be done to manage the fuels load. And I think that was such an amazing decision made to pull together this group. They're doing amazing work, and it really pays off for our safety. So thank you for recognizing them. On the 27th, I went to the Finance Committee Zoom meeting. On the 28th, I attended the Regional Parks Foundation Committee meeting, and again had an opportunity to thank them for all of their work in supporting the messaging that's being done. So thank them for all their wonderful work. And there was also a report from the Diversity Committee of the Regional Parks Foundation, and maybe at another time we can share some of the work that's being done by the foundation with that committee. Really important work. On the 6th, I also attended another EOC meeting. On the 7th in the morning, I also attended the CARPED meeting for the awards ceremony of our general manager. And also I want to again highlight what others have, the award for our foundation and for our outreach programs. I do have to say, though, it was so anticlimactic. We were all up early in the morning to celebrate with the general manager, and we didn't even get a chance to applaud. It went quickly, but nonetheless, Dennis did a beautiful job of introducing the general manager and talking about all the great work that he does and how deserving he is of that award. So thank you for that, Dennis. And let's see what else. CARPED, I attended the EOC meeting on the 9th, and on June, let's see, I'm missing something. Let's see, also on the 29th, I had the opportunity to take part in our first ever virtual walk and talk town hall. Assemblymember Bonta had scheduled a walk and talk with the Park District before COVID-19, and we didn't let that deter us. And we put together a really nice little program, his video and the video that I took part in with James Frank, our supervising naturalist out there at Crab Cove. And then we answered some questions. It went very well. I highly recommend all of you to continue doing the walk and talks with your local legislators. I think it's a really nice way to get out the work that we're doing. So, and I want to thank Lisa Baldinger and Eric Fuller, and of course James Frank for taking part in that, and especially Yuli Padmore, who, as you all know, creates great energy, and everything she touches is always very special. So thank you, Yuli, for that. And let's see, is there anything else? That's it as far as meetings. I also want to say thank you to all the board members who have been very busy on all of these great meetings arranged for us with our federal and state elected officials. I think it's brilliant on behalf of the Government Affairs Division to not forget the importance of us to continue to stay in contact with our elected officials and continue our advocacy efforts. And so very much appreciate all the work you have all done individually to prepare for those meetings and represent us very well with our elected officials. And let's see, what else do I have on my list of things here? I want to thank all of you for your amazing heartfelt comments a little earlier in today's meeting. So much appreciate the family that we're all part of at East Bay Regional Park District. And thank you for your very caring comments. And then I do also want to say how much I appreciate our public safety officers. We've given them a tough job to do during these COVID-19 times, but they have, with grace and professionalism, interacted with our public, who are not always in the best of mood. They're a little anxious and unhappy right now. I mean, it's a hard time for everybody, but thank you so much. You always shine for us. I want to thank, of course, Chief Chuburo, but also Captain Breed and Captain Love, who are also anchors in the EOC meetings, keeping us apprised. And I think I'll say something a little nice about Lieutenant Kocher as well. You know, thanks all for your support, and I hope I didn't leave somebody out on the command staff, but thanks to all of you for what you're doing for us. Appreciated all your extra hours, and on the top of that, mutual aid. So thank you. You make us proud. And with that, I would just, before I go back to Director Rosario for the adjournment, I would like to just say I hope we all have an opportunity to find a little peace, continue to be persistent, embrace this time of change, although these are tough times. You know, as they say, the sun always comes out after the storm. So I think that we all just continue to pull together here at the Park District and do what we can to make this world a better place, like we strive for every day, and appreciate all of our employees, and thank God for these beautiful open lands we have to share with the public, and give them a place to be during these tough times. So with that, Director Rosario, please, we'll join with you in some very special and important adjournments today.
Yes, I think it would be appropriate to close our board meeting in honor and recognition of and in memoriam of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, I should say, and Breonna Taylor. You know, George Floyd, we've witnessed his death at the hands, or I should say at the knee of a police officer who forgot his duty of protect and serve. Ahmaud Arbery, who was shot while he was running. Breonna Taylor was the EMT in Louisville, and returned home after serving her shift at a local hospital, to be shot to death because the police broke into her apartment and shot her to death, shot her 8 times. And the police had entered the wrong house. These are just a few of the tragic deaths that have come to light, and it breaks my heart. And that these are happening and have happened. And I also want to memorialize also the 100,000 deaths to COVID. The pandemic it's taking its share of American citizens and world citizens alike. And we can do better on all fronts. And that's all I can say is just do what we can and stand up. And that's all I can say right now.
Thank you so much, Director Rosario. Everybody take care. It was good to see you. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.